presidential candidate Bernie Sanders' heart attack last week has forced his campaign to reset at a pivotal time where rival Elizabeth Warren has passed him in several polls.
Hello, everybody. We're in Las Vegas. I just got out of the hospital a few hours ago, and I'm feeling so much better. I just want to thank all of you for the love and warm wishes that you sent to me. See you soon on the campaign trail.
All right, Sanders was discharged from the hospital in Las Vegas on Friday, while his rivals were attending a forum for service employees. Joining us now, former Chief of Staff to the DCCC and former Director of Strategic Communications for Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign, Adrienne Elrod. She's an MSNBC contributor. Also with us, Morning Joe medical contributor, Dr. Dave Campbell.
So, Dr. Dave, let's talk first about the medical condition of a 78-year-old candidate who had a heart attack. Walk us through exactly what happened to Bernie Sanders. I say exactly, not exactly. Give us a quick 30,000-foot look at that and some of the challenges that he'll be facing.
Absolutely, Joe. Thank you. Last week, about 6 days ago, Senator Sanders had a blockage of one of the arteries in his heart that led to chest pain, took him to the emergency room, and he had a stent placed to open up the artery to allow oxygenated blood to go to the heart muscle. We learned at the end of the week that some of the heart muscle was injured. That's called the heart attack. Now we have, moving forward, the reality that we have a 78-year-old male who now has proven risk of recurrent additional cardiovascular disease, heart attacks and strokes.
All right, so talk about that. Like, you know, when I was 40 years old, a car could fall on me and I'd keep walking. I'm, 56 now. If I get a splinter, I'm down for a couple months. I mean, it really does make a difference how old you are and how you respond quickly to this. We've all had parents. My dad had heart attacks, and it really slows you down. So is it a fair question to ask? Is this 78-year-old man going to be able to move forward, and what are some of the challenges and some of the dangers he's going to be facing?
He has an increased risk of having a stroke or another heart attack in the next year, although the risk is a minority risk. He has a risk of the stents clotting over time. But the reality is that Senator Sanders can get through this. He can move forward and be vibrant and be as energetic as he always has been. But this is one notch against him at 78. And if we look at a bigger picture and realize that we have 4 people in this race, from the president to Biden and Sanders, who have had either risks for heart disease or cardiovascular disease. The president is obese, and Biden has had aneurysms in the brain. The only one of 4 of that group of contenders that doesn't have a cardiovascular risk is Warren.
All right, so let's go to Adrienne there, because there are challenges that face the top 3 candidates. We were just talking about Joe Biden. His fundraising was definitely lower than some of the other candidates and lower than they'd like it to be. Bernie Sanders had a heart attack, and Elizabeth Warren, I think there's the big question of winnability. Can she beat Trump? But at this point, her candidacy is looking good. Adrienne?
Yeah, well, Mika, that's what's so interesting about this election right now on the Democratic Party side is that Democratic Party voters tend to skew young, they tend to skew diverse, but yet the top 3 candidates in the Democratic primary at this moment are all white individuals over the age of 70 years old. So sure, of course, there's going to come some health risks potentially with that. But I also think that this is exactly why I think we got to keep in mind that race is still, it's early. I mean, it doesn't always feel early, but it is early October. There is an opening, Mika, I truly believe, for somebody else to come into this top 3 and maybe make it a top 4 or a top 5. Maybe that's Mayor Pete. Maybe that's Cory Booker. Maybe that's Kamala Harris again. Maybe it's somebody else. But I have to think that there is potentially an opening here for somebody else to come in. But something really quickly about Bernie Sanders that we've got to keep in mind. his hardcore base of supporters, I don't think that this health issue that he has right now is going to affect that hardcore base. He raised $25 million in Q3, which is a very difficult quarter, notoriously the most difficult quarter in an election cycle to raise money because it's summertime, it's the off year. And he also raised the average donation of being $18, which means he can go back to those donors time and time again and say, I got to stay in this fight. I need more resources. I don't see him going I don't see his support among his hardcore base changing because of this.
You know, Jonathan Lemire, I know you have a question for Adrian, but first, you look at those numbers, and let's put up again the fundraising numbers for the third quarter. It is just nothing short of stunning to me that Joe Biden finished in 4th place in those numbers, behind a mayor from South Bend, Indiana, a former vice president, the front runner by a long shot in a lot of early polls, only raises $15 million in the third quarter, and a lot of that money from maxed out donors.
Joe, you're right. I mean, there's donors who won't be able to give money to the campaign again, and that's certainly a concern. My question for you, Adrian, is we're only about a week's time now from the next Democratic debate, which feels like potentially a real inflection point here. Bernie Sanders is going to be up there. He's going to have to face questions about his health. Joe Biden's going to be up there and have to face questions about Ukraine and his son. Right now, as the candidates are starting to prepare for that debate next week in Ohio, what are you looking to see from them?
Well, I'm looking to see if there's somebody else who's really going to break out again, who's going to have a moment. You know, we're going to have 12 candidates on the stage. It's going to be a big night for somebody like Tom Steyer. Obviously, he's been, hearkening on impeachment for a very long time, well before he was a candidate. Is now that process is going forward, is that going to be something that's going to be able to help him? Is Amy Klobuchar going to be able to break out of the pack? Is Kamala Harris going to have a moment that will really propel her forward or maybe keep her where she is? I mean, she needs some sort of big moment, I think, right now to really sustain her in this race going forward, even though she did have a good quarter, but her numbers are sort of lagging. So I'm looking to see if there's another big breakout moment. But I do think, we talk on television all the time. Is Joe Biden, how's his debate performance going to be? Is he going to improve upon the last one? It doesn't really matter to Joe Biden because, to the point that you guys have been talking about on this show, he is so durable in this election. The electorate is with him. African Americans voters are with him. I don't see the debates really mattering that much for him. I think they matter more for Tier 2 candidates who really need to break into that Tier 1 pack.
Got it. And Dr. Dave, to button up the Bernie Sanders heart attack story, I know his campaign is dealing with questions from the media about, what exactly happened. He was having a stent put in, and then it actually was a full-on heart attack. But could you talk about, because I have family members who've had heart attacks, and 10, 20 years later, they're fine. And certainly technology and the ability to treat these heart events, as you call them, has improved, and they are survivable, are they not?
Mika, they're absolutely survivable. The majority of people who have a heart attack that requires a stent do well for a long, long time. They take medications for a year or two. They go through cardiac rehabilitation. They strengthen their heart. They change their diet, and they're good to go. That's the majority. And so we can be optimistic and realize that Senator Sanders, in all likelihood, will get through this and be vibrant and go on to do whatever he wants to do in the coming years.
All right, Dr. Dave Campbell, thank you so much. Adrian Elrod, thank you as well. And coming up, in 2017, conspiracy theorists pushed the idea that the DNC framed Russia for election interference. We'll talk about how that unsubstantiated narrative started on the far-right message board 4chan and made it all the way to the White House. Morning Joe is back in 2 minutes.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.